Welcome to the Minor Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka 4 Inches Long Cut, or Uncut, but we're not going to get into that. What we are going to talk about though is Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I got to check out over the weekend. I've now watched the film twice, and that sort of gives an inkling to how I feel about it. You know, would I go back and watch a 4-hour film twice in a row if it wasn't good? Well, we'll talk about it. However, I just want to preface this video by saying there will be some minor spoilers here, hence the name change. And basically, if you watch the trailers or the 2017 theatrical cut, you probably have a fair idea of what's going on. Now, the skeletons of that story, you know, the structure of it, that's still basically within that film. So things like Steppenwolf's plan, which characters come back, and so on, they're all present in this movie. So I will be touching upon them. And if you don't want anything ruined, if for some reason you've managed to avoid Justice League completely, then get the hell out of here. Now, thanks for sticking around. I'm talking to you. And the first thing you probably want to know is this better than Justice League? Absolutely. It completely washes it away. It gets that bad taste out your mouth. And this is definitely the canon version of the film that we should have got in the first place. I think Warner Brothers recognized their error and they put this out, and now we can finally have it and just be like, this is amazing, but also, why the hell didn't you release this in the first place? I'm so glad that I don't have to stare at Henry Cavill's face doing this as he's talking and just looking so stupid, because that movie was so bad. And you know what? The crazy thing is, I actually bought it twice. I bought the Blu-ray, yeah, and I kept the slipcase, and I got the 4K as well. And yeah, gonna throw that away now. Don't need that anymore because we've got a much better version. So is it better than Justice League? Absolutely. Now, this video, I'm going to be talking about the good, the bad, and things I'm sort of unsure of. Now, I have spent 8 hours with this film, but there are still little nitpicks and things I think, you know, might either get to me or I might think, you know, I don't care. We'll discuss all that at the end, though. I just want to talk about the positives of this film straight off the bat, and that is just from the opening, it is already better than Justice League. Now, the way that the Zack Snyder trilogy worked, especially with this movie, is you realize all of these movies completely interconnect with one another. For example, Man of Steel, The Fight in Metropolis, you can watch that film, turn it off, pick up BVS, put it in, and you get the perspective of Bruce Wayne. That sort of happens with this film, and it ties in very, very well with the ending of Batman v Superman and sort of recontextualizes the events that happened in that to build upon this story and set it up. The way that I would describe it is just in the same way that the Two Towers opened, where you saw an event happen and then went with Gandalf and saw what he got up to. That basically happens in this film. Not to that extent action-wise, but they do a very, very good job of just allowing you to finish Batman v Superman and then put this disc in. Or start HBO Max. I'm sorry, I'm very physical media. Now, because of this, you're going to instantly recognize how tonally different that this movie is. The best way that I could describe it is that if you had a script for a comic book and you gave that script to two different artists, they'd both come back with something that's along the same lines, but one would be totally different to the other. And that is basically how this film feels. It does touch a lot on the same story beats, but one of these versions completely mishandled them, put in stupid corny jokes about aliens probing people and brunch and stuff like that, and this kind of doesn't do that, and therefore it's a lot better. Another comparison that I'd make is I'd say Josstice League feels like a movie, whereas this feels like a film. It's very earnest at points. They take the material seriously. It's not just kind of mocking themselves and you know, going, look how stupid this is. It's very, very, very earnest. And because of that, it carries a lot of angst with it. But, you know, you really appreciate how seriously that they're taking this. And when they're not making stupid jokes, it also allows the material itself to elevate. So you get a lot of epicness to the film. I think the phrase Lord of the Rings is going to be used a lot when people describe this movie. And it definitely feels that in terms of scale. Now, off the bat, they removed that terrible rooftop scene as well, and Bruce doesn't learn about the mother boxes or anything from an exploding parademon who, thanks for leaving that clue behind, massively helped us out to guess that you were invading. Instead, a lot of the exposition comes from Diana, who she goes on a quest to kind of discover the ins and outs of Darkseid, and then she relays that information, and it just makes more sense. In general, the way that the film works is that every single scene builds upon the last, and because of this, you have a continuous momentum throughout the film where it's all building towards a point. Whereas Justice League, I feel like you could have reordered a lot of those scenes and they probably still would have worked. This, you couldn't really do that, and it's all pushing towards this end battle, which is also incredible. Now, one of the more interesting aspects is actually Steppenwolf. I wasn't a big fan of him in the original one, even though I've got the Funko Pop back there. Wasn't a massive fan of him, but here you really see him in a sort of sympathetic light where his pride's made him boast that he can destroy worlds and take over planets. And because of that, he's been cast out of the kingdom of Apocalypse, and he's trying to win his way back. He gets a far more fleshed out backstory. He's a lot more intimidating, and also a lot of his motives make more sense. For example, in the Justice League cut, he was just showing up randomly on Themyscira, showing up in Atlantis, and then he was like, well, I don't know where the human one is. So, well, how did you find these other boxes? You see how he finds the boxes, and you also see like why a lot of his motives make more sense. There was another bit in Justice League where he teleports into where the Amazonians are, gets the mother box, they then lock him in, and it's just like, well, why would you do that? Because he can clearly just teleport in and out. No, yeah, they do something totally different that makes it make a lot more sense, and that in general is the overriding thing within the film. Pretty much all of the plot holes are filled in, and everything just gels together more, and because of that, you're not sitting there going, well, that doesn't make sense, and it's not taking you out of the movie as much, which for a 4-hour film, it needs to grab your attention and keep you engaged, and this really does. Things like the mother box landing in the car park, that's taken out. The Russian family are gone, kaput, you're off. That is amazing that they're removed. And even little touches like when Ben Affleck was shaving on the plane, if you look at that, you think Ben Affleck looks like a totally different geezer. He's probably just come off his holiday to film this bit again. All the things like that that remove you from the film are taken out, and because of that, it feels a lot tighter and well, it's just better produced. Now, much in the same way that Batman v Superman's Ultimate Edition added a lot more context and character motivation, this film does too. For example, when Bruce first meets Arthur, Arthur is pretty much like, F off, I'm gonna go swim with some mermaids. And then for some reason he just goes to Atlantis anyway and decides to get involved. Here they add a scene in which you can see why he has that motivation and how it's almost calling back to his destiny. And it works really well, and there's so many elements like that laced throughout the film that build upon these characters so you can understand exactly what's driving them. Now, the biggest vindication in this entire release outside of Zack is Ray Fisher's performance as Cyborg. In the original Justice League version, he just felt like a robot, he wasn't as interesting as he could be, and he was just sort of like, I'm a monster, and you were watching thinking, well, what can he really do? Why is he that important? Does he need to be here? This version, he is the heart and soul of this movie, and not only that, they also make it clear exactly why he's one of the most powerful people in the entire league. They have a scene where they show that because he's interfaced with every single aspect of technology on the planet, that he is pretty much a god and can control all of our digital currency, weapons, computer systems, defense programs, and because of this, he's the most powerful person on Earth. This is something that I never really thought when watching his portrayal in Justice League, and because it's fleshed out here, you almost see the gravity of the situation on his shoulders and understand why this is such a burden to him. Now, juxtaposing this, the guy is also half human, so he has the relationship with his father to deal with, and that feels really well put across in this movie too. Because of this, he's by far the MVP for me. He's the most interesting character in this film, and I think that there's a scene where you sort of get his powers introduction, and it feels very similar to Dr. Manhattan's in Watchmen, where you can sort of see his abilities. And it had me shedding a tear at the end of it, because he does something very, very nice for a complete stranger. And I think when you watch it, you're going to think, wow, this is how they should have put the character across. And it will make you want that solo movie with him. Now that kind of motif carries across to every single character, and because of that you get far more of their motivation and their thinking and saving the world. Ezra Miller's Flash is another great example of that, because we're not focusing on him going, I don't understand brunch. What is brunch? It's like, come on mate, it's breakfast and lunch. It's in the name. What do you mean? That's not a quirky characteristic. However, he does have these very, very good and light-hearted moments in this movie where he just goes off rambling, talking very fast. And you understand, because he's a speedster, he's sort of ahead of everyone, thoughts-wise. So when he's going through that, it just makes the character far more, better than him just going, I don't understand breakfast and lunch together. So he's another performance that I feel is really good. I have seen on social media that there's a lot of people that dislike him, but I think once you see his expanded power set as well, you start to really get why he's going to be important in the DCEU going forward. Now, whether they stick with this or not, I don't know. But after watching it, I think there's so many things that you really want to see going forward. It's going to be difficult for Warner Brothers to justify going in another direction after setting this up, because those cliffhangers at the ending, whoo, damn. Now, if you've been keeping up with the film, you'll obviously have seen that it ends on a cliffhanger. It doesn't just end on one cliffhanger, though. It ends on quite a few. And even scenes like Deathstroke meeting Lex on his yacht, they have some dialogue in that when you watch it, you will go, oh, what? And it basically just makes you want to see that Ben Affleck solo movie or HBO Max show even more, because it is so well done. Now this brings me to the added material, and though Darkseid isn't in the film all that much, his presence is felt a hell of a lot more. You get several flashes to the future throughout this film, and every time he appears, it's a like, oh man kind of moment. You will really crap yourself at points when you see what he's getting up to. Now this kind of all builds towards the nightmare scene, which is always in the back of Batman's mind. It's not laced too heavily throughout the film, but there are several new moments that no one has seen before, and they really flesh out why this guy is being driven insane by his fear of what's coming down the line. Jared Leto's Joker also appears in this, and he steals the scene. Him and Batman have a brilliant exchange in which you just think, why has it taken us this long to get a scene between these two? It works really, really well. And, I was hoping for the We Live in a Society line, but that's not actually in the movie. So they just did a fun gag for the trailer. But that scene is just outstanding, and it's one of the perfect ways to have the pair interact. Now, Superman, on the whole, he doesn't actually get that many more moments than what was in the theatrical cut, and he also shows up quite late towards the end of the film. I think it's about the last hour that he drops in, and, if you were expecting a lot more Henry Cavill, unfortunately, that's not really here. However, I'd say it's about the same amount of scenes that was in the theatrical cut, so you're not really missing too much, but the lines that he gets in those scenes feel a lot more poignant. For example, him going back to the Kent farm, that's got an added line of dialogue that just, it gets you in the heartstrings. You see his future at points as well, and sort of understand why he goes off in a certain direction. And it works really well in fleshing him out beyond what we got in the original version, which, stupid face that I'm so glad was removed, because I cannot watch that film sometimes without being taken out of it because of that terrible CGI, which, worst idea ever. The last hour is absolutely incredible, and from the point that Clark gets revived, they just constantly keep hitting you with big moments, and it makes for an amazing climax. And beyond that, you also get about a 20-minute epilogue scene in which a lot of things happen, and they set up so many interesting pathways for the future that if they don't go down this way, I'm showing up to both the Warner Brothers' house, and I'm saying, "No, mate, we need this, yeah." So, cannot recommend it high enough, not only for what they've added, but for what they've also removed. For example, Aquaman just finding the alien boxes, that's all taken out. The rooftop scene gone, the cell phone scene gone, the alien probe scene gone, the Russian family, all those sort of aspects that really made the first version terrible, they're gone, and in their place are so many amazing moments that really build upon the characters, show their motivations, and also just make this, the best DCEU film that there is. And I know that's saying a lot, but you'll understand when you watch it, this is really hitting a home run. But that doesn't mean it's perfect yet, and we are going to talk about the bad. Now, I'm going to be objective here in my review. The film isn't perfect, and at 4 hours, you're also going to have some bits that don't work. However, they are very, very minor. So when Batman goes to meet Arthur for the first time, there's a weird yodeling scene in that that kind of goes on for about a minute, and I understand it's kind of documenting the culture that Aquaman was very much integrated into, but they just stand there yodeling, and I was a bit like, okay, this isn't that good. There's also the museum scene, which is pretty much exactly the same as how it was presented in the theatrical version. So the 4 city blocks bit, the timer, which still makes no sense, that's all still in it. And for me personally, it doesn't really work that well. Now, it's a good action scene at showing off Wonder Woman, but when I look in the grand scheme of everything, it doesn't tie into the plot all that much. All it really basically has is a moment in which Diana inspires a young girl. And that is a message that we need. But in terms of, is it necessary to the movie? No. And does it create logic problems when you're watching it? Yes. So I don't really feel like the museum scene works that well. Now, because of this, there are actually several moments that I was sure were Joss Whedon's, but actually they're Zack Snyder's. And that is basically the museum scene. The first hour, because it's using, the foundation of the story has to be the same. You have to set up why Steppenwolf is coming. You have to set up the way that the world is after what's happened with Superman's death. Because of that, the first hour, there will be moments where you're like, well, I've already seen this bit, and it's difficult to judge it because I can't watch this with fresh eyes without seeing, the Justice League's always going to be in the back of my mind whenever I watch this film. And because of that, this first hour is very much sort of like, is this could really go either way. But once you get past that first hour and they've got the foundations of the story out the way that you've already seen before, you realize how much of a different direction they're taking this in, and everything sort of builds towards this amazing climax. The cemetery scene's also there, which I didn't really like. And the CGI on a certain new character that we haven't seen before, that you can tell they didn't really have the time or budget to properly make them look amazing. They don't look that good. Overall, though, the museum scene, that is my biggest problem with the film. And in the first version, it was about 5 to 10 minutes of a 2-hour movie, whereas here it's 5 to 10 minutes of a 4-hour movie. So the impact that it has is negated just massively in comparison. Now, the things I'm not sure on, the little nitpicks, the IMAX ratio. I've watched the film twice now, and I'm still a bit unsure on how I feel on that. I know everyone in the comments who's an expert on aspect ratios and IMAX, they're going to be arguing away, going, well, that's how it's meant to be filmed. Personally, to me, when I'm watching it, I'm thinking you've took the black bars off the top and bottom and you just put them on the sides. I know there's meant to be more of a picture, but when you watch it on a TV, it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like you've done that. And that is something I'm still a bit unsure of. I probably prefer the way that Nolan presents IMAX, which is that, you have your black bars along the top and bottom on normal scenes, but when it's IMAX, it fills the full screen. Now, what's also interesting is that the theatrical cut also filled the screen. So it is quite strange that they've kind of opted for this compressed version. And personally, I would just prefer the bars not to be there. So yeah, argue away about how I don't know about aspect ratios, please. I get the technical aspects. I get why Gemini Man was shot in 120 frames per second, and then they had, I can understand stuff. Yeah, it's just personal preference. I don't like the bars on the left and right that much. It doesn't ruin the film though. It's a nitpick. Now the score as well. That first hour, I don't really feel like the score was that strong. Hans Zimmer did an incredible job with Man of Steel and BVS, to the point that I think his score in those is absolutely incredible, and it really elevates the movie. Now, I know that JXL worked on Batman v Superman as well, and then he was given this project to himself. Early on, I don't really feel like the anthems are there. However, as we get more into the film, it really starts to pick up, and by the end of it, you are on board with the work that he's done. But early on, first hour or so, I was thinking, well, I'm not, getting into the music as much as I would be. Nitpick again, but yeah, that's how I felt. Now, Amber Heard also has a weird British accent in it, and I had to go back and rewatch Josstice League, which I hate you doing, to make sure that she had an American accent in that, and she did. Here she's got a British one, which clashes with Aquaman as well, I think. I don't know if I haven't rewatched that, but yeah, it's just kind of like, really? Okay. So yeah, don't know about the accent change. Don't know why they just didn't say to her, "You've never done this before, Amber. Do it." And what's weird is she actually must have dubbed over her own scenes with an American accent, because one of them is exactly the same as how it was in the theatrical version. It just has a British accent over the top. And we all know British accents are the most annoying things in the world. So yeah, those are the nitpicks. Obviously the good was lots of stuff to talk about, and lots of stuff I couldn't talk about. The good just completely outweighs the bad and the nitpicks, and it makes for an incredible film. This is really, really brilliant. You are going to be sitting there at the end of this thinking, why the hell did they go back and reshoot 75% of this movie to give us what we got? If they had released this, I think they would have by far been probably, a lot further ahead than in the Marvel catch-up. They might even be close to the same point, because they do such a good job of introducing these characters as part of the team, forming the team, and setting up the bigger threat down the line that really makes you want to learn what happens next. We definitely should get it, and it's a shame that Justice League was released, because I know a lot of people are going to see this film and just say, oh, well, it's probably the same movie, but it's 4 hours long. Oh, that'll put me off. So word of mouth is going to carry this film, as does, with a lot of Zack Snyder's Directors Cut. Batman v Superman was very much a film that I was like, I don't like it in the theatre. Watched it on the Ultimate Edition, and there was just improved it so much, and there was so many people that were like, well, I thought it was crap in the theatre, so I'm not gonna bother with that. And it's like, you have to say, look, mate, I'm telling you, you're sitting down, otherwise I'll knock you out. And they go, all right, mate, you're a big tough guy, I'll watch it. And they go, at the end, they go, yeah, you were right, and yeah, thanks for not beating me up as well. And I go, I didn't promise I wouldn't beat you up, mate. So yeah, just improves on it in every single way. And I don't want to sound disrespectful here, so I'm going to choose my words very, very, very carefully. What happened to Zack that made him leave this film was a complete tragedy. Now, had he continued working on the movie, the studio at some point would have stepped in and said, look, you can't release a 4-hour film in the theatre, you just can't do it. And he would have had to have made some compromises. So us getting this version, it's the best version that we could have got of this movie, I believe. I think if they had have released it in theatres back in 2017, they would have had to have cut so much, and it wouldn't have been as good as this is. So that, because Zack's been allowed to have full creative control on it, it's the best version of the film that we could have got. And we would, if we never got this version, we would have been robbed. So in some ways, to have it come out with a 4-hour cut, it's just vindicated this director who has been through so much, and this is going to be viewed as his masterpiece. This will be the film that he's remembered for. It's such an odyssey, it's an epic, and it elevates Snyder's reputation so much, and you see what he can do when he's got full creative control, and he can make an absolutely outstanding film, which this definitely is. Now, this film ends with the words "For Autumn" on the screen, and it's such a, it hits you right in the feels, and you realize how much this guy's gone through. And to just have his version released, which is so good, it feels like true justice. And that's not a terrible, well, it is a terrible pun, but I don't mean that in a sort of mocking way. It's also got one of the classiest ads that I've ever seen in the film, and you realize that Zack was doing this for his daughter, and it just feels, even behind the scenes stuff, it's as important as what we're seeing on screen. And the whole story of how this film got made, what happened in it now finally being released, there's so much going on in it, and it lives up to the hype. Its heart's completely in the right place. It's the best conclusion of Zack Snyder's trilogy that we could hope for. And Warner Bros. Are going to have a nightmare on their hands come Thursday. Crap pun intended on that one. As this sets up so much for the future that that they could say anything's going to be happening, in the DCEU. But if it hasn't got these people involved, you're going to be like, well, I kind of want to see that more. So do you mind going back and getting them, please? Because it's just, incredible. And I can't wait to talk about it in the spoilers. I am going to score it. I'm going to score it a 9 out of 10. The reason that I'm taking a point off is purely because of the nitpicks I had, such as the museum scene, the first hour, because a lot of it we have seen before. Even though it makes more sense, you are kind of going through the motions with it at points. But beyond that, incredible film. And I think people are going to be hard pressed to say this is a bad movie. I know there's DC haters out there, but yeah, we got everything we wanted. Everyone who's been campaigning for this film since the original, well done. Thank you for getting this released. It's one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. Best DCEU film by far. And yeah, what a conclusion to an epic trilogy. Now, thank you for sitting through my rambling. Sorry I couldn't get into more spoilers, but I hope you enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed talking about it, and I can't wait to talk about it more on Thursday when I do an ending explained review and talk about where things could be going in the future. Now, if you enjoyed the video, thumbs up, comments below. There's quite a few people that have actually seen that, so if they want to leave reviews as well, try and keep it spoiler free. Yeah, it's the minor spoiler show. I'd massively appreciate that, and yeah, thank you for sitting through my whole video. Hope you have a good week. If you haven't seen it yet, you will be having a good week, because come Thursday, you're gonna absolutely love this film. And you take care of yourself. Peace.